Hello my friends and welcome back. Today we're going to take a comparative look at these two pens. On the left side there is the relatively recently released Kyuseido Kakari, which is a product of Kyuseido pens from Japan and Gravitas, and we're going to compare this to the Conid Bulkfiller king size. When I first got the Kyuseido pen, I was wondering if this was a replication of the Conid pen. As we know, the Conid pen is quite difficult to get, and it's not available new through the manufacturer. They do release occasional small batches, but they are gone very quickly. When I got the Kyuseido pen, I did not have the Conid, so I was not able to make a comparison. Subsequently, they did release a batch, and I was able to get my hands on one of them, and was finally able to get one of the king size, one of the Conid Bulkfiller king sizes. So I've had a little bit of time and have been able to work with both of these, and I've had time to form my opinion about each one of these separately. And how I would like to compare these is basically how they serve me and my interest as a fountain pen user, and which one of these I prefer to have in my pocket when I go out. We can start with the design of the pens. They resemble each other distantly, not 100%. I think that the older Conid was more similar to this one, the older style bulk fillers. Nonetheless, they both have excellent demonstrator design. The caps are made of different material than the demonstrator body. The cap on the Kyuseido pen is made from titanium, it seems like, and so is the end piece here. And in the Conid, the cap is made of Duel, which is some kind of hard plastic, and a mixture of that and titanium. And the end piece where the piston attaches is also made of titanium, so they're quite similar. Looking at these pens, I would say that the Kyuseido pen looks a little bit more slick and more minimalistic. I think it has to do with the ring here and with the clip, although that kind of functionally works against the Kyuseido pen because it can just roll on the table and fall off. And I've seen a few people posting pictures of these broken right at the shaft here. So that's the overall design. When we uncap these pens, we can see that the sections are quite similar. The section on the Conid is a little bit thicker and does not flare out as much as the Kyuseido pen, which, you know, doesn't bother me. None of them bother me actually. They're pretty nice. They're very easy and ergonomic to hold, both of them. There are these threads, the cap threads, and they're pretty much out of the way when you hold the pen, and they don't bother me at all. They actually tuck in pretty good. Compare those to some of the other larger pens that dig into your finger basically. It's a pretty good design, very polished and clean. So I would say that they're pretty much similar in that department as well. The biggest difference in these two pens comes down to two things: their price and availability, of course, and the nibs that they offer. That's where I would like to focus my comparison. The Kyuseido pen comes in several nib sizes that range from fine, extra fine, stub, and even they have stacked nibs. And mine was some kind of naginata-like grind, which is great. Works very well and extremely juicy, can handle all kinds of shimmery inks perfectly, no problems. I liked it. It worked very well. Not my favorite nib though. The reason you don't see that nib on here is that, well, that's not my favorite nib. So what I love about both of these pens is that they're very good vehicle pens. What I mean is that they are vehicles for my favorite nibs. As if you follow my channel, you may have seen that I have had several different nibs placed on these pens, and specifically for the Conid Bulkfiller, I have every one of my top 5 favorite pens, their nibs, up here, except with the possible exception of the Emperor. The Emperor nib does not fit here, of course, and the M1000 Pelican does not fit on here. Otherwise, I've been able to put all of the Mont Blanc nibs on here. I've been able to put the Pilot Custom Urushi nib, which is definitely on top 3 of my favorite nibs. When I purchased this pen, it came with a box number 8. Currently, I have the Mont Blanc 149 calligraphy flex nib on here, and with the Mont Blanc feed also. And this proves to you that the Mont Blanc feed is actually not the issue with the people that have problem with the railroading and so forth. So I don't know what the issue would be that on the Mont Blanc pen this nib railroads on most people. It may have to do with how much it's broken in, to be honest, and what ink you use. Although I've not been able to railroad this nib and this nib on this pen with any ink that I use. So that's the Conid Bulkfiller. Essentially, I have been able to put all my favorite nibs on here. On the other hand, the Kyuseido pen carries a Yovo number 6 nib housing, which is nice. So the Kyuseido nibs are very, very well tuned. I'm not saying that you need those, but of course this is my comparison, so I'm going to give you my 2 cents. What I did was, I first tried putting the Magna Carta Max 600 nib on here. The nib was quite finicky, the initial original batch of their nibs, but when I put it on here, I was able to use that nib with some success, despite the finickiness. So it worked very well for that, but still it would railroad still a little bit, nonetheless. Then I was able to put several other nibs, any of the number 6 Yovo nibs that I've had. I had number 6 extra fine from before, that worked very well. And the number 6 nibs from Esterbrook fit here too. The other nib I was able to fit on here was the Mont Blanc 146 nib. That's not my favorite nib on this pen, although the 146 body is one of the best pens that you can find. So fast forward a couple of months, I was able to finally get my hands on one of these Regalia Writing Labs nibs. If you're unfamiliar, the Regalia Writing Labs, look at their website. They have this Yovo number 6 cross-flex nib. They do different kind of nibs. They do this cross-flex nibs that unfortunately is always out of stock. I was able to finally get my hand on one, and then later on 2 of these nibs, 2 different versions actually of the cross-flex. And once I put that nib on here, that nib never really left the pen. So this is my favorite nib on this pen, and I've been able to enjoy it very, very much. And the amount of ink that this nib puts out is staggering, depending on how much you press on the paper. This nib can consume a converter's worth of ink within a few lines to a couple of pages actually. Same with the Magna Carta Max 600, except this can get a lot wider lines and put a lot of ink in and exhaust your ink supply much more quickly. So with this pen, with the Kyuseido pen, the reservoir is much larger, so I'm quite happy with it, and this has been very, very much of a peak performer. If I were to compare the 2 nibs in terms of performance, I would say that the Mont Blanc 149 nib is more consistent in terms of writing every time you put it on the paper, but the Regalia nib, as you may have seen on several of my short videos, is in terms of flexing and line variation. Currently I do not own a pen that can beat the Regalia Writing Lab nib. Yes, I do have the 14 karat Ultra Flex nib from Fountain Pen Revolution. That one can put more ink on the paper. It is uncontrolled, unfortunately. The feed is way too wet and it can pour the ink out, it can burp, and it's relatively unusable outside of your writing desk at home. I don't like to leave my pens on the desk at home. I take them work with me. I write with them outside. So I want them to be usable. Unfortunately, the Ultra Flex from the Fountain Pen Revolution, as it stands, is not very useful for me. Maybe in the future, maybe I should try their steel nibs. So that's my brief comparison of these 2 pens. The other thing that I would like to compare is their filling mechanisms. When I first did my review of the Kyuseido pen, I was wondering, when I looked at the Conid website, they showed exactly like the Kyuseido pen how to fill this pen. It's very nice actually. So I'll put this here for good measure. The way I would fill a Conid bulk filler is that you just unscrew this, unscrew it, pull it all the way back, continue unscrewing it, and then you feel a tug, and if you keep turning, it'll release this plunger. So with the plunger, you can just use this like a syringe. And plunger, this makes it very easy to fill the pen. Also makes it super easy to clean the pen actually without opening anything else. Never had problem with ink residue remaining after cleaning it with a few pumps. So this pen is very, very easy to clean actually. So that is the Conid, and the Kyuseido pen fills somewhat similarly in that you basically unscrew this, bring it all the way out, keep unscrewing, and the piston will engage and unscrew itself. And now you have a plunger like the other one. The one difference is that this kind of hooked here as the Conid one that actually screws right in. So this one is easy to kind of like release. You can release the piston rod halfway through, and sometimes it can disengage unwantedly, so it's kind of like a pain in the neck occasionally. Nonetheless, still works like a syringe. You can still plunger in and out. What I found is that the plunger on this one is a little bit more stiff compared to the Conid, so maybe that can be changed in the future, but the whole piston mechanism is more substantial here. I think that it's a little bit more sophisticated based on their research and development. So I wouldn't say it's the piston mechanism is any better or worse than the Conid pen, but the very, very genius idea that they have had is that I'll demonstrate right now is that this piston mechanism is metallic, aside from the piston gasket, of course. So what you can do is, many times these pens, especially if your hands are smaller, they're kind of like back heavy like this, right? So it's back heavy. So what you can do is you can adjust the weight distribution. So what I can do is I can just bring the piston halfway up, get some ink on my fingers. Inky fingers are happy fingers. Anyway, so I can bring it halfway up. I can then disengage the rod and bring it down and shut it off. So what I've now done is I've redistributed the weight center, and you can adjust this to your liking. And that's the biggest difference with the Conid pen, is that I find it very, very interesting. Actually, I like it, and the pen to me is not back weighted when I use at the normal resting position. But if that's something that bothers you, you can always change the center of gravity for this pen. I don't think that the ink capacity at this point is a big deal because there's plenty of ink in here. I personally like to change my inks every now and then. So this, although reduces the ink capacity a little bit, it doesn't really bother me if I were to leave this halfway through and park it right in the middle. It kind of looks cool too, right? So it looks cool. So those are the big differences. Why don't we actually go through pros and cons of each of these pens? For the king size, the elephant in the room is obvious, is that it's so hard to find. And when you find these on secondary market, they're super high price, over $1,000. Even from the manufacturer, these are over $1,000 when you try to buy them. So the biggest pro for me is that the weight distribution, the feel in hand, and the ergonomics is absolutely perfect for me. The second closest pen to this is a Pelikan M1000 in terms of the ease of holding and the perfection. The Montblanc 149 is overall very, very close, but I would say that this to me is pretty much perfection in terms of ergonomics of holding it. The other thing that I really love about this pen is that I can take all of my favorite nibs, which is the top 3 favorite pens I have right now are the Emperor, Montblanc 149, and the Pilot Custom Rouge. All those 3 I can actually fit into a flexible nib factory housing and screw right into a Bach number 8 receiver here. And I've been able to put in all kinds of nibs, and it's such a joy to use. I wish I was able to borrow this to any one of you guys to try and see how awesome this is actually. So those are the pros and cons of this pen. And I haven't had this for long. I don't I cannot attest to durability. Unfortunately, the piston rod a little bit wobbly when it moves in and out, but I think that might be just a feature. It doesn't bother me much. On the flip side, the rod is much thinner. The rod is much thinner than the Kyuseido pen. The Kyuseido pen rod does not wobble as much, of course. So I really like the, in summary, I really like the ability, the ergonomics, and the ability to change the nibs to my most favorite nibs in the market. And it has a clip. It clips on your pocket, easy to carry around. It looks beautiful as well. Those are bonuses. Boni. The biggest advantage we have for the Kyuseido pen is that the pen is a Yowo number 6 nib unit receiver, and there are very many Yowo number 6 great nibs modified aftermarket. You can buy some really nice stack nibs and so forth and put on this nib, on this pen, and enjoy life. I love that. The weight distribution of this pen is very good. It's not as good as the Conid for me, but I cannot really complain. If I didn't have the Conid, I would not complain. I would not know the difference. But that's such a perfection. This, although not perfect, you can move the park the piston in different positions and basically fine-tune it to your liking. The durability of this pen, again, I cannot really attest to. I've had it for about 6, 7, 8 months, and the pen has not had a hiccup. It always writes when you start writing with it with the original nib and feed. It can handle shimmer like no other pen that I've ever seen. So those are the two big pros. The other pro to me is availability. This pen can be found actually, you know, in the market. It can be found through either Kyuseido pens or any pen show you go to. Pretty much my friends are there with their Kyuseido pens for many different nib sizes. They're there, you know, and CY from 2Q stationers is actually, you know, available in most of the pen shows, so it's a little bit easier to get. The cons for this pen, unfortunately, are also there. The number one con is that still the price is pretty high, like this one. Not as high as this one, but the price is still $600-700 US. Is out of the reach for most people. The other con is that this pen can easily roll out of the desk and fall and break. So I wish it had a roll stop of some kind. If you look at the Gravitas, can do it, of course. If you look at the Gravitas pocket pen, it has this little flattened spot there that if you roll the pen, it can stop there. They could have done something similar, but I guess they went with the overall slickness of the pen. So that's a negative in my book. You can of course put that Kaweco clip here or get an aftermarket clip, but why would we have to do that? So those are the pros and cons for this pen. I'm going to, I'll do a couple of scribbles with this, with my favorite nib. I have plenty of writing samples on my channel with the Kyuseido pen armed with Regalia Writing Labs nib. You can see that it's amazing. This nib is out of this world. Out of all the flex nibs that I've experienced, nothing really comes close. Nothing comes close. Just running out of it. Magna Carta is nice. It can probably get a little bit thinner lines than this, but in terms of line variation and the quality of overall quality of flex and snapback, Magna Carta has nothing to say in comparison to this pen. So that's the Kyuseido pen. In the Conid, like I said, I have the 149 nib here. That's the 149 flex. Since I have put this 149 flex, I've never had it railroad or hiccup or not start immediately. This nib can get a lot thinner lines compared to the Regalia nib, but it's such a pleasure to write with this pen and nib combination that pretty much all the pen you need, all the pen I need in these two. So those are my comparisons. Of course, I've probably left out a lot of pros and cons for both of these pens. Do let me know which one of these would you pick if you had both of them available and was ready to, if you're ready to walk out of the house and go for, say, a weekend trip, which one of these would you take with you? I don't know. I would take both of these. I hope you found this entertaining and maybe a little bit enlightening. If you have any questions, please do let me know. I'm usually pretty quick to answer questions in my comment sections. See you in the next video. Goodbye.